Abimelech, chapter 9. Abimelech tries to be king. Abimelech, the son of Gideon, went to Shechem. While there, he met with his mother's relatives and told them to say to the leaders of Shechem, "Do you think it would be good to have all 70 of Gideon's sons ruling us? Wouldn't you rather have just one man as king? Abimelech would make a good king, and he's related to us." Abimelech's uncles talked it over with the leaders of Shechem, who agreed, "Yes, it would be better for one of our relatives to be king." Then they gave Abimelech 70 pieces of silver from the temple of their god Baal Berith. Abimelech used the silver to hire a gang of rough soldiers who would do anything for money. Abimelech and his soldiers went to his father's home in Ophrah and brought out Gideon's other sons to a large rock, where they murdered all 70. Gideon's youngest son Jotham hid from the soldiers, but he was the only one who escaped. The leaders of Shechem, including the priests and the military officers, met at the tree next to the sacred rock in Shechem to crown Abimelech king. Jotham heard what they were doing, so he climbed to the top of Mount Gerizim and shouted down to the people who were there at the meeting, "Leaders of Shechem, listen to me, and perhaps God will listen to you." Once the trees searched for someone to be king, they asked the olive tree, "Will you be our king?" But the olive tree replied, "My oil brings honor to people and gods. I won't stop making oil, just so my branches can wave above the other trees." Then they asked the fig tree, "Will you be our king?" But the fig tree replied, "I won't stop growing my delicious fruit, just so my branches can wave above the other trees." Next they asked the grapevine, "Will you be our king?" But the grapevine replied, "My wine brings cheer to people and gods. I won't stop making wine, just so my branches can wave above the other trees." Finally, they went to the thorn bush and asked, "Will you be our king?" The thorn bush replied, "If you really want me to be your king, then come into my shade, and I will protect you. But if you are deceiving me, I'll start a fire that will spread out and destroy the cedars of Lebanon." After Jotham had finished telling this story, he said, "My father Gideon risked his life for you when he fought to rescue you from the Midianites. Did you reward Gideon by being kind to his family? No, you did not. You attacked his family and killed all 70 of his sons on that rock. And was it right to make Abimelech your king? He's merely the son of my father's slave girl. But just because he's your relative, you made him king of Shechem. So you leaders of Shechem, if you treated Gideon and his family the way you should have, then I hope you and Abimelech will make each other very happy. But if it was wrong to treat Gideon and his family the way you did, then I pray that Abimelech will destroy you with fire. And I pray that you will do the same to him." Jotham ran off and went to live in the town of Beer, where he could be safe from his brother Abimelech. Abimelech destroyed Shechem. Abimelech had been a military commander of Israel for 3 years when God decided to punish him and the leaders of Shechem for killing Gideon's 70 sons. So God turned the leaders of Shechem against Abimelech. Then they sent some men to hide on the hilltops and watch for Abimelech and his troops, while they sent others to rob everyone who went by on the road. But Abimelech found out what they were doing. One day, Gaal, son of Ebed, went to live in Shechem. His brothers moved there too, and soon the leaders of Shechem started trusting him. The time came for the grape harvest, and the people of Shechem went into their vineyards and picked the grapes. They put the grapes in their wine pits and worked on them to squeeze out the juice in order to make wine. Then they went into the temple of their god and threw a big party. There was a lot of eating and drinking, and before long they were cursing Abimelech. Gaal said, Hamor was the founder of Shechem, and one of his descendants should be our ruler. But Abimelech's father was Gideon, so Abimelech isn't really one of us. He shouldn't be our king, and we shouldn't have to obey him or Zebul, who rules Shechem for him. If I were the ruler of Shechem, I'd get rid of that Abimelech. I'd tell him, get yourself an even bigger army, and we will still defeat you. Zebul was angry when he found out what Gaal had said, and so he sent some messengers to Abimelech, but they had to pretend to be doing something else, or they would not have been allowed to leave Shechem. Zebul told the messengers to say, Gaal, the son of Ebed, has come to Shechem along with his brothers, and they have persuaded the people to let Gaal rule Shechem instead of you. This is what I think you should do. Lead your army here during the night and hide in the fields. Get up the next morning at sunrise and rush out of your hiding places to attack the town. Gaal and his followers will come out to fight you, but you will easily defeat them. So one night Abimelech led his soldiers to Shechem. He divided them into 4 groups, and they all hid near the town. The next morning Gaal went out and stood in the opening of the town gate. Abimelech and his soldiers left their hiding places, and Gaal saw them. Zebul was standing there with Gaal, and Gaal remarked, Zebul, that looks like a crowd of people coming down from the mountain tops. No, Zebul answered, it's just the shadows of the mountains. It only looks like people moving. But Zebul, look over there, Gaal said. There is a crowd coming down from the sacred mountain, and another group is coming along the road from the tree where people talk with the spirits of the dead. Then Zebul replied, what good is all your boasting now? You were the one who said Abimelech shouldn't be the ruler of Shechem. Out there is the army that you made fun of, so go out and fight them. Gaal and the leaders of Shechem went out and fought Abimelech. Soon the people of Shechem turned and ran back into the town. However, Abimelech and his troops were close behind and killed many of them along the way. Abimelech stayed at Arumah, and Zebul forced Gaal and his brothers out of Shechem. The next morning, the people of Shechem were getting ready to work in their fields as usual, but someone told Abimelech about it. Abimelech divided his army into 3 groups and set up an ambush in the fields near Shechem. When the people came out of the town, he and his army rushed out from their hiding places and attacked. Abimelech and the troops with him ran to the town gate and took control of it, while 2 other groups attacked and killed the people who were in the fields. He and his troops fought in Shechem all day until they had killed everyone in town. Then he and his men tore down the houses and buildings and scattered salt everywhere. Earlier that day, the leaders of the temple of El-Berith at Shechem had heard about the attack, so they went into the temple fortress. But Abimelech found out where they were. He led his troops to Mount Zalmon, where he took an axe and chopped off a tree branch. He repeated the branch onto his shoulder and shouted, Hurry, cut off a branch just as I did. When they all had branches, they followed Abimelech back to Shechem. They piled the branches against the fortress and set them on fire, burning down the fortress and killing about 1,000 men and women. After destroying Shechem, Abimelech went to Thebez. He surrounded the town and captured it, but there was a tall fortress in the middle of the town, and the town leaders and everyone else went inside. Then they barred the gate and went up to the flat roof. Abimelech and his army rushed to the fortress and tried to force their way inside. Abimelech himself was about to set the heavy wooden doors on fire when a woman on the roof dropped a large rock on his head and cracked his skull. The soldier who carried his weapons was nearby, and Abimelech told him, Take out your sword and kill me. I don't want people to say that I was killed by a woman. So the soldier ran his sword through Abimelech, and when the Israelite soldiers saw that their leader was dead, they went back home. That's how God punished Abimelech for killing his brothers and bringing shame on his father's family. God also punished the people of Shechem for helping Abimelech. Everything happened just as Jotham's curse said it would. Tola, Jair, and Jephthah. Chapter 10, Tola. Tola was the next person to rescue Israel. He belonged to the Issachar tribe, but he lived in Shamir, a town in the hill country of Ephraim. His father was Puah, and his grandfather was Dodo. Tola was a leader of Israel for 23 years. Then he died and was buried in Shamir. Jair, the next leader of Israel, was Jair, who lived in Gilead. He was a leader for 22 years. He had 30 sons, and each son had his own mule and was in charge of one town in Gilead. Those 30 towns are still called the settlements of Jair. When he died, he was buried in the town of Kamon. Israel is unfaithful again. Before long, the Israelites began disobeying the Lord by worshipping Baal, Astarte, and gods from Syria, Sidon, Moab, Ammon, and Philistia. The Lord was angry with Israel and decided to let Philistia and Ammon conquer them. So the same year that Jair died, Israel's army was crushed by these two nations. For 18 years, Ammon was cruel to the Israelites who lived in Gilead, the region east of the river Jordan that had once belonged to the Amorites. Then the Ammonites began crossing the Jordan and attacking the tribes of Judah, Benjamin, and Ephraim. Life was miserable for the Israelites. They begged the Lord for help and confessed, "We were unfaithful to you, our Lord. We stopped worshiping you and started worshiping idols of Baal." The Lord answered, "In the past, when you came crying to me for help, I rescued you. At one time or another, I've rescued you from the Egyptians, the Amorites, the Ammonites, the Philistines, the Sidonians, the Amalekites, and the Maonites. But I'm not going to rescue you anymore. You've left me and gone off to worship other gods. If you are in such big trouble, go and cry to them for help." "We have been unfaithful," the Israelites admitted. "If we must be punished, do it yourself. But please rescue us from the Ammonites." Then the Israelites got rid of the idols of the foreign gods, and they began worshiping only the Lord. Finally, there came a time when the Lord could no longer stand to see them suffer. The Ammonites invade Gilead. The rulers of Ammon called their soldiers together and led them to Gilead, where they set up camp. The Israelites gathered at Mizpah and set up camp there. The leaders of Gilead asked each other, "Who can lead an attack on the Ammonites?" Then they agreed, "If we can find someone who can lead the attack, we'll make him the ruler of Gilead." Chapter 11. Jephthah. The leaders of the Gilead clan decided to ask a brave warrior named Jephthah, son of Gilead, to lead the attack against the Ammonites. Even though Jephthah belonged to the Gilead clan, he had earlier been first to leave the region where they had lived. Jephthah was the son of a prostitute, but these half-brothers were the sons of his father's wife. One day, his half-brothers told him, "You don't really belong to our family, so you can't have any of the family property." Then they forced Jephthah to leave home. Jephthah went to the country of Tob, where he was joined by a number of men who would do anything for money. So the leaders of Gilead went to Jephthah and said, "Please come back to Gilead. If you lead our army, we will be able to fight off the Ammonites." "Did you hate me?" Jephthah replied. "Weren't you the ones who forced me to leave my family? You are coming to me now just because you are in trouble." "But we do want you to come back," the leaders said. "And if you lead us in battle against the Ammonites, we will make you the ruler of Gilead." "All right," Jephthah said. "If I go back with you and the Lord lets me defeat the Ammonites, will you really make me your ruler?" "You have our word," the leaders answered, "and the Lord is witness to what we have said." So Jephthah went back to Mizpah with the leaders of Gilead. The people of Gilead gathered at the place of worship and made Jephthah their ruler. Jephthah also made promises to them. After the ceremony, Jephthah sent messengers to say to the king of Ammon, "Are you trying to start a war? You have invaded my country, and I want to know why." The king of Ammon replied, "Tell Jephthah that the land really belongs to me, all the way from the river Arnon in the south to the river Jabbok in the north and west to the river Jordan. When the Israelites came out of Egypt, they stole it. Tell Jephthah to return it to me, and there won't be any war." Jephthah sent the messengers back to the king of Ammon, and they told him that Jephthah had said, "Israel hasn't taken any territory from Moab or Ammon." When the Israelites came from Egypt, they traveled in the desert to the Red Sea and then to Kadesh. They sent messengers to the king of Edom and said, "Please let us go through your country." But the king of Edom refused. They also sent messengers to the king of Moab, but he wouldn't let them cross his country either. And so the Israelites stayed at Kadesh. A little later, the Israelites set out into the desert, going east of Edom and Moab, and camping on the eastern side of the gorge of the river Arnon. The Arnon is the eastern border of Moab, and since the Israelites didn't cross it, they didn't even set foot in Moab. The Israelites sent messengers to the Amorite king Sihon of Heshbon. "Please," they said, let our people go through your country to get to our own land." Sihon didn't think the Israelites could be trusted, so he called his army together. They set up camp at Jahaz. Then they attacked the Israelite camp, but the Lord God helped Israel defeat Sihon and his army. Israel took over all of the Amorite land where Sihon's people had lived, from the river Arnon in the south to the river Jabbok in the north, and from the desert in the east to the river Jordan in the west. The messengers also told the king of Ammon that Jephthah had said, "The Lord God of Israel helped his nation get rid of the Amorites and take their land. Now, do you think you're going to take over that same territory? If Chemosh, your God, takes over a country and gives it to you, don't you have a right to it? And if the Lord takes over a country and gives it to us, the land is ours. Are you better than Balak, the son of Zippor? He was the king of Moab, but he didn't quarrel with Israel or start a war with us. For 300 years, Israelites have been living in Heshbon and Aroer and the nearby villages, and in the towns along the Arnon Gorge. If the land really belonged to the Ammonite, you wouldn't have waited until now to try to get it back. I haven't done anything to you, but it's certainly wrong of you to start a war. I pray that the Lord will show whether Israel or Ammon is in the right." But the king of Ammon paid no attention to Jephthah's message. Then the Lord's Spirit took control of Jephthah, and Jephthah went through Gilead and Manasseh, raising an army. Finally, he arrived at Mizpah in Gilead, where he promised the Lord, "If you will let me defeat the Ammonites and come home safely, I will sacrifice to you whoever comes out to meet me first." From Mizpah, Jephthah attacked the Ammonites, and the Lord helped him defeat them. Jephthah and his army destroyed the 20 towns between Aroer and Minnith, and others as far as Abel Keramim. After that, the Ammonites could not invade Israel anymore. Jephthah's daughter. When Jephthah returned to his home in Mizpah, the first one to meet him was his daughter. She was playing a tambourine and dancing to celebrate his victory, and she was his only child. "Oh," Jephthah cried. Then he tore his clothes in sorrow and said to his daughter, "I made a sacred promise to the Lord, and I must keep it. Your coming out to meet me has broken my heart." "Father," she said, "you made a sacred promise to the Lord, and he let you defeat the Ammonites. Now you must do what you promised, even if it means I must die." But first, please let me spend 2 months wandering in the hill countries. With my friends. We will cry together because I can never get married and have children. Yes, you may have 2 months, Jephthah says. She and some other girls left, and for 2 months they wandered in the hill country, crying because she could never get married and have children. Then she went back to her father. He did what he had promised, and she never got married. That's why every year Israelite girls walk around for 4 days weeping for Jephthah's daughter.